Ready?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 12th, 2023 meeting of the Northborough Select Board. My name is Mitch Cohen. I chair this friendly committee, and I will read some opening remarks. This open meeting of the Northborough Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Select Board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order also allows the Northborough Select Board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. I will now go around the virtual room and confirm that everyone can hear and be heard. In the order appearing on my screen, Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Kristen Wickstead.
Here.
Laura Zeiton.
Here.
Lisa Maselli.
Here.
And also with us tonight is Interim Town Administrator Bob Reed.
Here.
And we have Police Chief Bill Liver.
Present.
DPW Director Scott Charpentier.
Present.
And Assistant Town Administrator Becca Meekins.
Present.
And Facilities Director, I think that's your title, Sean Thompson.
Here.
Excellent. We also have Owen from Northborough Cable with us, handling the Zoom end of the evening and recording for cable. Thank you very much, everybody. First item on our agenda, as always, is public comment. If there's anyone in the public wishing to make a comment on items particularly not on our agenda, now would be a grand time to raise your hand and let us know, and I'll recognize you. But we'll recognize people on agenda items anytime during the meeting. I don't see any hands yet, but we'll give it another moment or two. Nothing yet. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Moving along, we have our first regular agenda item is approval of meeting minutes from May 22nd, 2023. And I know Laura sent in a correction. Just to an item, I think, under your public comments from last time, just to correct the record there. Does anyone else have any other corrections or adjustments to make?
The amendment was actually, we had a duplicate word in the charge for the Traffic Safety Committee, so that has been updated.
Okay. I think it was also something on the meeting minutes in addition to the charge.
Correct.
Separate.
Correct.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. In which case I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended.
I move the board to vote to approve the May 22nd, 2023 meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Laura.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
Julianne.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Meeting minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda is the Scholarship Committee. I'm going to bring in, actually, Owen, you have the list in front of you. You can bring folks in if you'd like. I'll bring in Liz Nolan. I've got a list here.
I wrote the list as well.
Okay, I want you to take care of it if you don't mind. Good evening, Liz.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Very good, very good. So why don't you introduce yourself as we bring in some other starring guests for the evening?
Sure. So I am representing the Scholarship Committee. And tonight we're just hoping, to acknowledge some of the recipients that are able to attend this meeting. I think in the past they used to attend the in-person meetings for the select board. So, I thought it would be just nice to show their faces and congratulate them, acknowledge all their hard work to get to where they are. Just to give a little background on it, I just wanted to let you know that, so the scholarship committee has been around for a while. Our committee members are relatively new, all have been appointed within the last year or two. So in the past year, we really came together to brainstorm new ways to fundraise, as well as finding new ways to improve the process in general. We're also really set on bringing more awareness that the scholarship fund is even there for both students to apply, as well as part of our fundraising, to let the community know, what our funds are used for and how we're raising them. For those who may not know, the scholarship fund does not receive any money from the town budget. It relies solely on the generosity of the community, and the number of scholarships and the amount that we award to recipients each year is based on available funds. So there are three ways that people can contribute to the fund. One is to check off the box on your tax bill to add an amount dedicated to the fund, which I know a lot of people don't even know that exists. You can also donate online through the link on the scholarship committee, which is on the town website. There is an instant donate button on there. And also, your participation in fundraisers is always welcomed. Two very successful fundraisers that we had this year included a mini photo shoot by Jennifer McNeil Photography. We also teamed up with Algonquin with the help of Principal Sean Bevan to sell graduation yard signs. So you probably saw those around town, especially in the past week. This was made possible also with the help of HB Printing here in town, who helped us with the printing of the signs. This year, we were able to award a total of $3,300 to 7 Northborough High School seniors. We had 5 students from Algonquin, 1 from Assabet, and 1 from St. John's. And 3 of those 7 that were chosen, there was about 30 applicants total. So it was not an easy decision for our committee to select the recipients. It was really a great group of applications. It just made it really difficult, which makes us more that we're going to raise a lot more money next year so that we can, do more. The decision is made upon the applicant's community service and work experience, school activities, as well as those activities they do outside of school. And we also ask what they learned from those experiences as part of the application process. Their academic standing and financial need is also considered. And we also give them an essay question. And this year, that question was, how has Northborough influenced you to become a better person? So for 2023, our recipients are Mohammed Sal, James Benestad, Allison Silva, Julia Gallus, Gabriel Gomes, Mariana LaRusso, and Isabel McNulty. I think most of them are on, except maybe 2. I'm not sure. I know 5 were definite, so.
So I only found 3 in the attendees list. If there's anyone who is in the Zoom right now, but has not been brought in, please raise your hand. Sometimes names don't match up. So I didn't recognize a couple of the names from the list, and there may be some people just watching on TV or watching the YouTube feed or weren't able to make it. I don't see any hands. So I will first say congratulations to the 3 of you and all of the other scholarship recipients. Thank you very much for joining us this evening as you finish your high school career, preparing for the next phase of education. It's great that Northborough has created the scholarship fund and that people have been willing to put some money into it, and then we can help you out. I'd like to open it up to maybe for the 3 of you, if any of you would like to introduce yourself and say anything. You don't have to if you don't want to, that's all right. Raise your hand, I'll recognize you. If not, any members of the board have anything that they would like to say at this time? Kristen.
Hi, so not to be that annoying person, ladies, but I would love to know what you're doing in fall and what your plans are since you applied for a scholarship. I assume you are off to some sort of higher education. So would you each like to just give us whatever you would like to tell us about what your plans are? And maybe we'll go in this order. Mariana, Allison, and then Isabel? Because that's the order you're in on our screens, I think.
Sure, if you could unmute yourself and
Hi. I'm planning to attend Smith College in the fall. I'm planning to major in Spanish, and hopefully I want to go into translation in the future.
Awesome. Congratulations. I went to Mount Holyoke, so.
Oh, I also toured there. It was my
Nice. Okay, great. Okay.
Hello, I'm Allison. Thank you all again. I'll be at UMass Amherst next year, and I will be majoring in elementary education.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Isabel.
Yeah, I'm Isabel. I'm also going to UMass Amherst next year, and I'm majoring in physics. And I'd just like to say thank you all for having me on and for the scholarship.
Awesome. Congratulations. So you'll all be in the 5 College Valley out there in the Pioneer Valley. So that'll be great. Good for you. Thanks.
I just want to say congratulations, ladies, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
I'd like to say congratulations also to all of you and those at home, but also to Liz for having it sounds like a very successful scholarship season and letting us know how, how many applications you received and bringing more awareness to it. So thanks all.
Excellent. Anybody have anything else?
Congratulations. It's nice to see you all tonight, and I wish you all the best.
Liz, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I do not. I just want to congratulate these ladies as well as those recipients that I guess could not make it. I know there was 2 that couldn't make it. So I don't know what happened to the other 2, but I know there are a bunch of very busy kids too. So they're probably working or, doing
Busy time of year transition
it
school
is.
to college. Yeah.
But, congratulations. And it's nice to see your faces. I know a couple of you, but good luck next year and enjoy the summer.
Yes, good luck to all of you next year, and don't forget to come back to Northborough. And if you're not 18 yet, when you turn 18, be sure to register to vote, because you can continue to vote in your hometown even after you go to college if you so desire. Voting is something we all appreciate here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, girls. Thanks, Liz, too.
Sure.
See ya.
Okay, all set. That was really nice. I'm glad we did that. Next up, we have Janine Moore of Tugas Family Farm to consider a 1-day special liquor license for multiple dates, which I won't read, but we'll get to them. And I know we have, I assume the Carrie is the Carrie Ward. Oh, looks like Owen's already taken charge of that. Thank you. And Janine Moore. Oh, Carrie, I thought you were in here. All right. So we should have Carrie Ward and Janine Moore. Let's see, they both for this.
Hi, I'm here. I don't know if I can get my video. Here we go.
Okay.
There I am.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. So my understanding is you're both from Tugas, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. And you've applied for a 1-day liquor license, but for multiple dates. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Tugas has planned?
Sure. I'll start and then Janine can chime in if I miss anything. So we are just planning to add, hopefully, just the sale of beer to our normal daily events. We are trying to highlight some of our events, like 1 weekend a month, starting hopefully this weekend if everything goes accordingly with Father's Day weekend, and then celebrating National Ice Cream Day, but we're going to try to turn that into the whole weekend. So what better things than beer and ice cream, I guess. And then we have the other one in August, doing donut days of summer, and then a fall Halloween event we've done the past couple of years, pick or treat. So we would be hoping to, and I believe everyone hopefully has the copies of the maps that we submitted to, barrier in a certain area that's already in our picnic area and have that as a serving area, so that when people are enjoying their lunches and things we offer, they can just have that as an added product to what we already offer. I guess in a nutshell.
Thank you. Since the dates haven't been mentioned, I'll read the dates. June 17th, 18th, 19th, July 14th, 15th, and 16th, August 12th and 13th, and October 28th and 29th, for premises located at 234 Ball Street, also, of course, known as Tugas.
Correct.
And Police Chief Bill Liver. I don't know if you have any comments, but I believe that you've reviewed this.
We have spoke with Lieutenant Griffin. We have no concerns.
Thank you. Members of the board, any questions?
I'd just like to say, I live in the neighborhood that involves Ball Street, and I think Tugas does a really good job of monitoring the traffic, because fortunately it gets busy, but there's always somebody there helping people to park and cross and everything else. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, we are used to dealing with big crowds and, have good ways to manage that with barriers and wristbands and keeping things safe and under control.
Have you done this before?
We have in different capacities, and we did it all in 2019 pre-COVID, but we had worked with, we ourselves didn't take out the license. We did that one time, and then we worked with Cold Harbor Brewery the first time. And then we did a fundraising event with Central Mass Grown, where they did like a dinner in the field, and they carried the license for that. So this will be the second one that we have. And then Farm Family Insurance just happened to offer a new policy now that covers this type of thing, where you do, it's not a whole year, but it's like X amount of events per year. So it gets kind of tricky with the seasonal stuff sometimes, figuring out what coverage is best.
Can I ask a question about the food at these events? So in the past, I think just on weekends, you were offering hamburgers and things like that, outside of the regular store. Are you going to add more food options, or?
We hope to, yes, just to also, it really does also help with the crowds when you have a few places you're serving food. So we will be preparing, we still prepare all the food in the kitchen, and do most of the prep there, and then hold it, and cook it outside. And I think Janine's been in contact with the health inspector.
Michael.
Yes, that's her department. So if you have anything else that I know you've been talking with him.
Yeah, so all the food gets prepped in actually the kitchen, and then it gets held at the proper temperature, whether it be frozen, cold, or warm, in thermostatically controlled, like electric apparatus. So a freezer, a cooler, as in a refrigerator, or a warmer, so a chafing dish. And then it will be served outside.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen?
Is there a particular beer company that you're working with for this, or?
Yes. So we are working with Stone Cow Brewery, which is out in Barrie. Okay. And it's kind of a unique relationship because we've the past few years have supplied them with some fruit, and they've brewed, and they only distribute beer to other farms that have taps. So the only place you can get their product is either on their own farm or other farms. I know like Lilac Hedge serves them, but it's kind of, and all their beers have like farmy kind of names to them. It's like Farmer Meister. And so it's kind of cool. It goes with like our theme and our brand. It's nice to work with them too. They're friends of ours.
Great. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Lisa?
Hi, are you going to do flavors and such, like in the fall, do the pumpkin spicy things and different things for each one of your events?
I hope so. Something Sean, the brewer, he loves to talk beer. So he's giving me lots of ideas because we were talking about the ice cream one. I was like, I'd love to do like a beer float. We're probably just going to have like two styles. You know, we also don't want to make it like too complicated. We like to keep things moving. So it's kind of like either this or that. Maybe like 3 options, but definitely something for the fall.
Even
Maybe
blueberry.
they can,
Blueberry.
yeah. Yeah, they did a blueberry and a strawberry beer with our fruit before. So.
Great, well, good.
There being nothing else, I will entertain a motion.
I'm pulling it up. Hold on one second.
So sorry for sticking you with another long one this
I know you
time.
gave me the 2 long ones. This is especially long, but I'm happy to say it. I move the board vote to approve the application for a 1-day special license as submitted by Tugas Family Farm LLC for events to be held at 234 Ball Street per the approved floor plan as submitted with the application. The event dates are June 17th, 18th, and 19th, July 14th, 15th, and 16th, August 12th and 13th, and October 28th and 29th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. with no rain dates. The license is approved with the condition that the precautions and systems are in place for each event as stated in the June 1st, 2023 letter from Tugas Family Farm.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Kristen?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa? I didn't actually hear you, Lisa.
Aye.
There we go. Thank you. And I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You've got your license. Congratulations. And I wish you success with your events.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You guys come up.
Yeah. We'll check it out. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have Police Chief Bill Liver. Bill, you're already, of course, part of the meeting, and you've got reappointments of some special police officers. Tell us a little bit about that, if you could.
Sure. This is an annual appointment. Our special officers, they work part-time. Their primary responsibilities are filling construction details, traffic control, to alleviate the summertime demand during the construction season. For details, the first officer would be retired Sergeant Jim Bruce, who did his career here, as you probably all know. Jim stays on to do details. Then we have Erica Abro, who is a town resident, and she is a certified police officer. She's a special for us, as with several other communities. And Bruce Tate is also a Northborough resident. He is a retired Quincy police officer that moved out here to Northborough. He's fully certified and trained, and they are the 3 part-time special officers that I would ask for you to appoint again for the next fiscal year.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions from the board?
Yes. Okay, so it's James, Bruce, Erica, and who's
Bruce.
the 3rd person?
Bruce Tate.
I don't think that quite
Oh,
came in
you're
our-
right. The draft motion that was sent around does not include Bruce Tate, but he is on the agenda. So that's
Okay.
That was a typo made during the drafting of the motion.
That should be no problem, right?
Thank you for catching that, Julianne. Laura?
I have a quick question. It's good to see you, Chief. I hope you're doing well. I know that I think at a past meeting we had talked about staffing studies, and I know that our team is working really hard. And is this because we don't have enough police officers to accommodate this? And is this something that could end up being permanent positions? Like, is this I'm just trying to understand. At first, I was wondering why it's not permanent positions and why they're special. So I'm sorry for the roundabout questioning, but I'm just trying to understand if this is just because the volume of work is so great.
There are several statutes that authorize boards of selectmen to appoint police officers. And one of the classifications, there are reserve police officers, there are part-time, and then there are special police officers. The board can basically appoint just about anybody as a special police officer in years past, but now with the post commission, they have to have minimum standards and training. Our department, we only, for the most part, we only hire town residents or our own retirees. They do not work cruiser shifts. They don't supplement our staff. Our authorized staff currently is 23 police officers, including myself. These folks just supplement us. They don't work, they don't come in and take overtime shifts. It's basically help us during the traffic season. We'll never have enough police officers to handle traffic control requests for private vendors like National Grid, Verizon, any number of contractors that are opening the roads. We oftentimes even have to reach out to our neighboring communities for somebody for that. So these three folks help us in that, in trying to fill those needs or requests as they come in. Because oftentimes we just can't fill them. And I just basically kind of do this and say, put out a lot of traffic cones and stay off the road as best you can. Because if your power's out and you want someone to work, you don't want the police saying you can't work. So they help us in that area.
Well, thanks for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Any other questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to reappoint James Bruce, Erica Abro, and Bruce Tate as special police officers for a 1-year period through June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Julianne, seconded by Kristen. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Thank you very much, Chief. You've got your officers.
Yeah.
Very good. Next on our agenda, we have the Temporary Traffic Safety Committee. Recommendation to create a permanent traffic safety committee. So this was a committee created several months ago. Scott.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I believe you skipped over the
I did.
Item number 6.
I went ahead and I crossed off Chief Liver at the beginning of his, and then I thought I went back and crossed it off, but I did skip you. My apologize. We are going to move back in time to DPW Director Scott Charpentier and Facilities Manager Sean Thompson report on assessment of municipal buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll
Sure.
just go over briefly on how we got here and then give it to Sean to kind of go over a little more of the details on the facility assessment. We've been discussing the conditions of the town-owned buildings for quite some time. There's a varying age for West Main Street all the way up to the new senior center. One of the pieces of items that we've struggled with is staying ahead of things. One of the reasons we brought in a facilities manager is to get their hands around preventative maintenance, what needs to be done, programmatically scheduling replacements of significant equipment. In order to do that, we need to know what we have and where it is. So we had talked about different funding mechanisms. One of them was ARPA. I believe, Julian, you had brought up some ARPA funds possibly for this use in the past when the board was considering multiple ARPA uses. So Sean, if you want to give us a little bio on what we're requesting for funding here in the assessment.
Yeah, sure. So just real quick, for those who may not know, a facility condition assessment is crucial for understanding the overall condition, performance, and maintenance needs of any facility. I feel it's particularly important for the town since we've gone decades in most cases for most of these facilities that will be involved in the assessment without a proper maintenance plan in place. It involves a comprehensive evaluation of physical assets, systems, infrastructure of the buildings and or the outside property. The assessment will help in the following areas. It'll help us with asset management, financial planning, preventive maintenance, risk management, regulatory compliance, and strategic decision-making. I can elaborate on those topics further if you guys want later on, but basically, upon the completion of the assessment, the town will receive a narrative report with descriptions of major systems and their current conditions, digital photos of key components and deficiencies, a 20-year capital reserve table with system and subsystem replacement costs and dates. So basically, they're going to put a table out for us, and over the next 20 years, this is what we should be doing, and this is when we should be doing it. They'll put together a preventive maintenance schedule based on the different pieces of equipment that we have at each facility. And then the software that they provide us will allow us to generate many other reports and tracking metrics that will allow us to get away from, like Scott said, the reactive approach to major system components and be more proactive, so we can kind of get ahead of the problems, budget for them, instead of just saying, let's set this chunk of money aside in case something happens. It's okay, this is what we need to do this year, here's what we should be looking at next year. So kind of just to wrap it up, facility condition assessment is important for effective facility management, financial planning, risk mitigation, and it helps our organization optimize our resources and enhance operational efficiency and ensure longevity and functionality for the different facilities.
But to kind of close that out and round it out, this comes at a really convenient time, really well timed with some other projects. We're nearing completion of our self-evaluation and transition plan for ADA compliance. That includes the buildings, interior as well as exterior. We're also getting ready to kick off the town hall reuse feasibility study, which includes obviously town hall 4 West Main Street as part of the considerations. So, those 3 projects, coming together at right around the budget preparation time, I think will be helpful to see where we need to go on the capital plan side, as well as building improvements. You've all seen our capital improvement plan 6 years out. What it has not presented in the past is boiler at this building, air conditioning units here, the critical facilities, envelope repairs, meaning, exteriors, windows and doors. So bringing those three projects together at the same time, I think is a real benefit to the community. And what we're looking for here is $47,000 allocated potentially for funding this assessment.
We can't hear you, Mitch.
Mitch, you're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Thank you, Scott and Sean. Any questions from the board? Kristen, then Laura.
Hi, so thank you for that. So it's just for those of us who aren't comfortable with talking about lots of building maintenance and stuff. So it says $47,000 will be the cost of the assessment and a 3-year software support. So is there also a cost for software?
So that's included in that 47. So each year it's roughly $5,000. It escalates each year, but on average, that's basically where we're at. And the software is what's going to provide you with all the information tracking. So what they do is they'll go in and they'll put a barcode on every piece of equipment that we have at each facility. So when we have service performed on that facility, we can scan the barcode, attach the invoice to that piece of equipment. So as years go down, we can now track, like, okay, the plan may say replace unit A in 5 years, but according to our repair log, unit B is costing us more money to maintain, is essentially the same year. So now we can make the decision to go with B over A because we know B is breaking down sooner than A and help save us money in the long run. So the software provides benefits like that, along with other different reports and tracking metrics.
And you get the initial assessment of all the buildings and all the equipment and machinery in the buildings that
Correct.
You can track.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Laura?
Thank you. I've got a few questions, actually. I like the sound of this, so thank you for all you've done so far to get us to this point. When was the last time that we did one of these? I guess,
as far as I know, never.
Assessments? Okay.
I don't think we've ever done one. Again, like, so we're in the infancy of developing a facilities department for the town, at least in this side. Like they've had facilities and they actually use this same software at the schools.
Yep.
It's just the town buildings in particular. So library, senior center, fire department, police department, 4 West Main Street, town hall, DPW garage. They've never had a plan or a team in place to address these issues. So it's gonna seem overwhelming at first. So there's gonna be a lot of information and a lot of we need to address, but it starts us down the correct path.
I agree. No question there. So it sounds like it's a software that we already use as the town. Is this a project that would go out to like an RFP bid? Like, how are we going to select the person that's going to go out and do this work?
So these numbers are from a vendor that we've already selected. I've gone out with various different companies to get different numbers, but they're a Sourcewell vendor, so we actually don't have to go out to bid.
Okay.
We've already been approved by the state, so we're okay to move forward as long as you guys determine we should allocate the funds for it.
Okay, so and then the software and the person, it's all part of the same company that's part of the Sourcewell?
Yep.
Got it. I think that was all my questions, but thanks so much for the opportunity to ask those.
Thanks, Laura. Lisa.
Hi, and again, I'm totally on board with doing this. I think you're right. Buildings really need to have some preparedness for the next several years. So I have several questions. In terms, I suppose the easiest question to ask first is with the software, and where people are having a lot of difficulty sometimes with software and theft or breaking down. Is there an insurance thing or something that gives you a second area to find the information if the software became corrupt or something were to happen to it?
I'm not entirely sure. I can follow up with them. But just speaking with Bud over at the schools, they've had it for several years and have had no issues. I would assume, again, I'll verify and let you know, but I would assume there's a backup somewhere to it. That's typically how these companies operate. I've worked with different building management systems before, not this particular company, but that's usually what happens is they have a backup of the data for you in the event something like this happens. A lot of them are cloud-based.
Right. And
So, just to follow up a little bit, Lisa, the RMIS GIS director, he has a standard set of security questions as well as redundancy questions that he rolls out to any proposed or new software vendors. We're going through a transition with our gas boy, our fuel islands. He's going through the same process with that vendor as well. So he's pretty well versed in vetting these software vendors.
okay, and I think Laura can attest to some of this, what I'm asking about, since she's very well versed in that. And would they also give us a hard copy so that we can keep one of those on file here, so that if the electricity went down or what have you, we could use that as well? Or is it always going to be on the computer?
Of the initial report, or as things progress over time? Because we'll get a hard copy of the initial report, and then the actual development of the system and tracking over time, I'll be able to print reports at any point in time. So if you wanted to come down and see kind of where we're at, then I can just print you out what it gives us. And the other thing that it offers is it will allow the different directors at each facility to submit work orders for issues that they see that I may not come across. So like if the library, there's a dozen light bulbs out or something, Jen can put in a work order, which will then come to me and to Pete, our facilities guy, and we can schedule to get things addressed.
Okay, well, I think it's a great idea. Quickly, I noticed that the water department wasn't listed under the DPW garage. So is that its own entity because they own 2 buildings there and their own equipment, or just the buildings and the equipment goes under DPW?
So they're their own buildings. They were not included in the initial thing, mainly because the old water barn is just It's pretty simple. There's one furnace in there. And then it's basically like a garage. And then the new barn, we've already set stuff up with it being a brand new building. So we're just trying to catch up on the buildings that have not been addressed since they've been live. So we're on top of the new garage already, and the old one it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, there's no air conditioning. It's just one boiler. We know how old it is. We know we need to plan for that already. So that's why we didn't include those.
And what about the paint or keeping it up on the outside? Doesn't that get also part of what you're looking at with all these other buildings?
In a way, so when we talk about the facade of the building, it's more about the structure of it, not the cosmetics. The painting is something really anybody can identify. We're looking at more like brick pointing or just failing siding, things like that. And with it being a metal building, it's pretty straightforward.
All right, well, I still think you should probably put a little slot in for it because in a couple of years, it's going to need to be in that same group.
I would expect us to add in the water garage in the coming years. They're an enterprise fund. They would own that portion of the project as opposed to the general fund or even ARPA. ARPA is federal tax dollars. The water enterprise fund only provides service to 80% of the community. So if we were to add that in later, after we've gotten this software up and running and we're comfortable with it, the water enterprise fund would be supporting that financially.
All right, and then would you have an allowance for any new buildings? Like say we built a new building, is there an allowance there for what that starts with? Even though it's a brand new building, you'd still have to have your beginning point, all right, of having your equipment and having your new fire station, so to speak, if you're going to do that.
Yeah, so if we take on a new asset, they can add it to our system. We'd be on the hook for them coming out to tag the equipment. Again, with new buildings, it's a lot easier to start fresh without having to bring in an outside consultant, because when we get all the information turned over to us at the end of the build, that's going to give us the preventive maintenance program and everything like that. So we'd really just need them for barcoding the equipment so we could scan in stuff as we track it as it develops. But we'd be able to implement the plans and stuff that are already recommended when we take over the building. So we wouldn't need them to come assess the whole building. We would just need them to tag the equipment for us.
Okay, and I'm assuming the schools are on their own. So even though they have
Correct.
those three or four schools are on their own.
Yep.
Okay, and did they give you, I mean, obviously they've given you a quote to do that, and then for 3 years of holding the information, did they give you a quote as to what the cost will go up, like 5% a year or 10% a year? Did they hold that in a contract?
So year one, the software is going to cost us $5,388 for the year. In year two, that jumps up to $6,054, and then in year three, it's $6,789.
Okay, and how far in advance do you have to continue to use them in the contract, or are there other companies, say 3 years from now, that might be giving you a better price for that product?
So there's the option down the road, obviously, to switch to a different vendor. It would eliminate the barcoding system. Each company handles their tracking in a different way. But yeah, there's always the room to change. We can only sign a 3-year contract as a municipality. So we're in for the 3 years, and then depending on satisfaction, like let's say after year one, we're not happy with the product at all, we can opt out with, like, we're not held to the 3 years. We can opt out with a 30-day notice and be fine. So there is flexibility. Switching vendors entirely does kind of open us up to having to spend more money if we want to tie in a new company to our existing assets. But I don't think it's cost prohibitive.
Okay. And do you have to give them a certain time limit that this is going to happen? Do you have to, like, it's at 60 days before the end of the year or something, or?
So, so if we wanted to break the contract once we enter into it, it's 30 days written notice. And then if we just don't want to renew at the end of each year, that option is up to us at the end of the year. We just don't re-engage the contract.
Okay. And finally, is the amount of that 47,000 firm? Not going to come back with another 3,000 or 8,000 or whatever here or there during
So
this?
as long as we enter into the contract by June 1st, that number's firm. After June 1st, there's a risk of there being an increase from the time he sent me this proposal until we finally agree on entering into the contract.
Could you mean July 1st, Sean?
July 1st, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was going to say 2024. So, all right. Well, it's good. I'm glad, like I said, I'm very glad you're doing it. I think there's a lot of questions that we ask because it's not something that's been done before. And I think it's good to be thorough. It's interesting that this is this now software. I mean, I'm obviously from the old school, so I'm so used to everything being on paper and, making a tangible something that the cloud is for me.
Yeah, and we can get hard copies at any point as we work through it. It's just obviously being in a digital format, it's a lot more user friendly. We can access them on tablets, smartphones, computers. There'll be an app. So it just creates more flexibility.
Okay. And will it be given to the finance committee for?
Yeah, so the main thing that I'm excited about is once we gather all this information, it's going to allow me to put together tangible data that we can present when we're budgeting. Like, it's not going to be just, oh, Sean's throwing out an arbitrary number. We need this amount of money to replace this because he said so. It's going to be, here's what the data says. These are our best options, but what do we think works best for the community?
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Laura, I saw your hand up. I got a couple questions
Yeah.
I want to ask first, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry.
Then we'll go back to you, I promise. Regarding the assessment that's listed there, do they actually look at the items, at the equipment, and really review them? For example, they look at the boiler and say, oh, this is wearing a little faster than we would expect, so we think it's only got 5 years left instead of 10 years left.
Yeah, so that's that part where I was talking about the digital photos of key components and deficiencies. So as they evaluate the equipment, they're going to take down the model, the serial number, so they'll be able to track the age of it. They'll be able to tell you what its useful life is, how much life is expected left in it, but also anything glaring that's sticking out during their visual inspection that might indicate it's either further down that road or is in better shape than would be expected.
Okay. Next question, the ongoing. So $47,000 with the 3 years of software built in roughly breaks down to $30,000 for the initial setup and the rest for the 3 years. Are you planning to put the ongoing maintenance beyond the 3 years into your regular operating budget beyond that, on the assumption that you like the software?
Yeah, as long as it delivers what they say and we are happy as a community with the service they're providing, then I think it would make a lot of sense to continue with it. If we decide down the road that the actual assessment really gave us the most important information that we needed, which I think is definitely the case, like that chunk of initial information is going to give us insight into a lot of stuff that we just don't have right now. So if we decide, okay, maybe $7,000 in 4 years isn't really worth what we're getting out of the reports, then we can discuss it at that point. But I really think the reports and the tracking and just the accessibility of all that information is going to be worth the investment. And yes, we'll budget for it going forward.
Great, thanks. Next question. On current town hall, as you know, there's, we've just formed a town hall feasibility study committee, and we don't know what the outcome of that is because they haven't started. But it is possible that town hall may move somewhere else, and that building might be repurposed for municipal function or for non-municipal function, or sold off or anything like that. I wonder, I think we all anticipate that that building needs a lot of work, which is why we're starting the feasibility study committee process. I'm wondering if it makes sense to include it in that when in the end we don't know whether we're going to even have the building, certainly not for its current use for a while. And if we do keep town hall there, I am sure that feasibility study will identify significant repairs that will be necessary, and it will all change anyway.
Well, so we actually have 4 West Main Street and current town hall included in that $30,000 number. I think it's important that we keep it in, just because while we're in this process, I mean, I think we've all been in this long enough to understand that even though we're starting the process, we're at least 5 years away from a new town hall. And I can tell you just off the bat, every single air conditioner in that building is past its useful life. Some of those units are older than I am. So there's definitely a need to get a handle on that. And I don't think just for the sake of including it, but just because it's going to allow the taxpayers to understand, like, we may need to sink some money into this building even though we're leaving. There's going to be a time where those units no longer operate. Some of them, like I said, are 15, 20 years past where they should be. So the fact that they're operating now is pretty impressive. So I think being able to present people with the information is important.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I would think that the information that the study would come up with would be valuable to the Town Hall Feasibility Committee in helping them make a decision when they start looking at the numbers. I would think that the findings of the committee and the value of the study and the value that's put on it would be helpful for them in their decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. You said you're including 4 West Main in this also?
Well, yes.
Your first opportunity to get a handle on that. So,
well, we knew when we were going through getting these numbers, we knew that 4 West Main was coming up and that it was a potential for a future town hall. So it just made sense, rather than have to come back around to it, just to include it in the initial and probably get a little bit of savings that way.
Yeah, in that case, I mean, we're going to own the building, so no matter what the purpose is, it's important for you to get a handle on it. This may be a good way to do that. And as you add additional buildings, they charge, such as the new fire station, they charge to come in and identify everything, even though things are new on the new building. They would
just come in to charge to tag the equipment and upload it into the software for us. It's going to be significantly less than doing a full assessment. Like I said before, we won't really need the full assessment because we're going to get all that preventative maintenance information from the builders as part of the stuff that gets turned over to us on the completion of the build.
Great. Okay, thanks, Sean. That was my questions. Laura, you had your hand up before.
Oh, you definitely hit one of them. So who is the company that we're going to be working with that's going to be doing the assessment, the actual work?
They've rebranded a few times, but currently they're called Brightly Software.
Brightly Software?
Yep.
And are they the company is it one of their employees that's going to go out to our buildings and do this work, or is that a separate company?
So they have, it's through them, but they have like certified engineers and architects that come out and do that type of stuff for us.
So is that a separate, is it like a reseller that we're using, or is it like, and who is that if so?
They don't specify in the proposal. It just says a representative from Bright.
Great. Thank you.
But the town's contract is with that company that you mentioned, and then they hire a contractor to do the work. Okay. Any other questions, Julianne?
Yeah, so I'm going to get right to the point. Are we going to vote on this tonight?
That's a good question, because it wasn't specified on the agenda, particularly for that purpose, and there wasn't a draft motion prepared by the office. I imagine if Bob thought we could, then we could. If not, then we could. If the board was interested in pursuing this, we could put it on our meeting, on our agenda for the 26th of June, and still get it in time for you to meet the deadline.
Well, I'm sorry about no motion, but I don't think the fact that a specific vote wasn't mentioned in the agenda precludes you from taking a vote if you wanted to take a vote.
Yeah, I agree.
What's the amount of money? 47,000 or 47,000?
47,000 even.
47,000 even. Okay.
Okay, Lisa, is that your hand up?
One last question, just to confirm. I hear a lot about the equipment and the boilers and things like that, but what about the roof and the outer part of these buildings, the foundation?
That's included in the building envelope. They're going to analyze parking lots. They'll even do the playground over at Town Hall because it's part of the property. So it's inside the building. It's hallways, furniture. It's the whole package. They're going to evaluate the entire building.
Okay, but painting's the only thing that's not, only because you can see it?
No, they'll point it out. I'm just saying I was just talking specifically about the water building. Like when you're talking about exterior painting, like that's not something I need them to point out for me. I'm fine with identifying that on my own, but stuff like that will be included as well in the assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Is the board interested in pursuing this evening?
I'll make a motion. It might need to be amended, but I'll start. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the select board allocate $47,000 from ARPA funds for a comprehensive municipal building assessment.
Second.
Okay. Bob, does that meet your need for the motion, and Scott and Sean?
I would think that's fine, with the understanding that we're going with this particular company, yes.
Okay. So been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You've got your project. Sean, thank you very much for describing this to us and putting some attention to this. I know this was something that you were interested in doing, and something the board was also interested in doing. So it's nice when these things come together, and we very much look forward to the outcome. Actually, one final question about how long does it take?
It'll take a few weeks for sure.
Great.
I think they said 3 to 6 weeks, depending.
Great. Yeah, since you said you're getting a hard copy or an electronic version thereof, once you get it, I think the board would love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Bob.
Since Sean was going to be at the meeting, I thought it might be useful to add to the packet the estimate from Capital Environmental on doing remediation at White Cliffs. I know you have White Cliffs a little bit later on the agenda, but if you had any questions for Sean specifically while he's here.
I can stick around till later too, if that's easier. But whatever works.
My preference is to deal with the White Cliffs items within the White Cliffs agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sean. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Next up, we have, for real this time, the Temporary Traffic Safety Committee, the recommendation to create a permanent traffic safety committee. So back several months ago, this board created a temporary traffic safety committee based on numerous requests over the years from the public to look into traffic safety matters. And that committee formed, and I will allow the chair of that committee to bring us up to date. Laura, you chaired that committee. Thank you very much for your work there. Let us know what's going on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this. So first and foremost, I would like to thank all the members that signed up to help with this really important initiative for town. Our members were Bill Pierce, Janine Callahan, Mark McMenemy, Chris Tacitus, Mitch Cohen, and thank you so much to Scott Sharpendier, who joined us for all of those meetings. So this committee was established by the Board of Selectmen to decide or determine if Northborough required a permanent traffic safety committee. So our committee was formed and we got right to work. We did a lot of research. We surveyed 59 communities in Massachusetts to see what they were doing to address some of the traffic safety concerns. Based on our research, we decided that this would definitely be something that would benefit Northborough. From there, we developed the charge, which you've all been able to review, but ultimately, the goal of the Permanent Traffic Safety Committee is to improve the livability, drivability, accessibility, and all forms of pedestrian and intermodal transportation in Northborough. That was the charge. We also decided what the membership would include. There was a lot of thought that went into this. One common theme for our committee was really awareness of the enormous pressure on town staff. So we didn't want to require anybody to really have to sit with us as we were going through our monthly meetings. But I do want to stress how critical important our staff's position is in this. They're always invited to join us. If there are specific topics that we believe will require the police or fire or DPW, we will definitely invite them as special guests to participate in those meetings. But ultimately, we want this committee to really complement the work that we're already doing and maybe help with some of that heavy lifting for making the roads safer. I'd love to gather any feedback or questions if anybody has from what I've shared so far.
Kristen.
I may have missed you saying this, but wasn't Scott Charpentier at your meetings as well?
Oh, yes. No, absolutely. He was a part of every one of our meetings from the beginning, and he will be our ongoing staff liaison that will work with us on this. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate all that you've done.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I heard a lot of good things from various people in the committee about how helpful you were, Scott. So thanks for that. And so is this like memo we have here, is that, oh,
This
there's
is the charge. Yeah, the charge.
Yeah,
So the
okay.
committee developed a charge which included everything that the committee will be responsible for, oversee, working alongside the various people from town staff. And then I think ultimately our plan tonight is to hopefully establish a permanent traffic safety committee to really get started with the work of helping for safer streets.
And did you say 59 other communities you looked at?
Yes. So what we did in our first meeting was we identified all of the communities in Massachusetts. We had some really smart people that put great spreadsheets together. And then from there, we established specific criteria. So we had a very standardized list of questions. You know, what are the towns doing in terms of membership? What is the towns doing? What are the other towns doing in terms of charge? And then actually, when we whittled that list down, we had personal interviews with several traffic safety chairs from a variety of communities around Massachusetts. So this is really like compiled based on what everybody else is doing, what they like, hopefully eliminating some of the things that they don't like. One thing that really came out as a strong recommendation is how important the relationship is between the Traffic Safety Committee and the Board of Selectmen. There's going to be a lot of work where we'll do the research and find those recommendations, but ultimately it's going to be the selectmen that'll help us really make the changes to help with this overall mission of the committee.
Awesome. Okay, one more question, and maybe you were planning on talking about this later, but did you involve the police and Chief Liver in particular in any of your conversations and that sort of thing, or were you going to go there?
I think we made a misstep here, and I apologize, Chief Liver and to Chief Parenti. We went through all the other different communities asking them, but I'm so sorry. We did not talk to the chiefs.
Okay, so that's fine as far as because I was just going to, I told Chief Liver during my report, I was going to bring something up that had to do with him. So I noticed on his report, he gives us a monthly or bi-monthly report or whatever on sort of what the police department has been doing. And this month there was a very specific section of it that I was going to read as my quote in my report, but I'm just going to read it now because it really affects the traffic safety situation. He says, for the past several years, I have submitted supplemental, I missed a word, a supplemental budget request to the town administrator for additional personnel, specifically 2 additional police officers and a deputy chief. The 2 additional officers would allow us to establish a traffic division with 2 officers exclusively paying attention to traffic violation enforcement, unencumbered of all but the most serious calls for support. So I just thought that was relevant to what you might have discussed with other towns. Did you talk to other towns? Do they have more police officers than we do per number of people, per busy roads, per warehouse traffic and semi trucks? Like, did you look into that at all?
So we didn't look at the number of police officers per capita. We did look at proximity to distribution centers, proximity to major highways, and just some of those similar characteristics to what Northborough is experiencing. I'm sorry, Chief, I did get that report today, but I just haven't had a chance to open it up yet to see that specific comment. So I don't know if that answers that question.
Well, could we ask Chief Liver to weigh
Yes.
in?
Oh, sorry. Chairman, is that okay with you?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I'll add in that the town administrator, has the ability to assign any staff members to any committee. The then town administrator, this all took place before Bob joined us, assigned Scott Charpentier from the DPW. My assumption is did not assign anybody else because no one else attended our meetings. And, in the committee's surveys to other towns, we mostly focused on their traffic safety committees. We didn't go beyond that to look at their police departments or overall safety issues or anything other than what we heard back from those committees. Looking at police levels and staffing levels may be something that the traffic safety committee might want to touch upon, but that's more of I think a staffing issue for the town as a whole and the select board to undertake. But yeah, Chief Liver, if you have any thoughts on the formation of this committee and any details therein, I'd be eager to hear.
Well, I do. Thank you. And thank you, Kristen, for at least giving me the courtesy of being able to speak. You cannot discuss traffic safety without including the police department. There needs to be a permanent position, a representative on that committee. There are things that people want to see and may recommend or want to see done as far as like traffic enforcement, but there needs to be someone there to establish what are reasonable and unreasonable enforcement expectations. There are, in the past, there have been recommendations made to address certain safety issues, but there's no statutory authority to do it. It would be unenforceable. You really need to have someone that knows what traffic safety looks like and how to go about doing it, at least as an opinion that's based on experience. So as far as the makeup of that committee moving forward, I would just strongly urge you to make it that the chief of police or his designee is a permanent member of the committee. You just can't talk public traffic safety without having a police representative, because we're the ones who enforce what you're going to try to implement.
I definitely, so I just want to acknowledge we did discuss this in great detail. And again, the big feedback that we were trying to overcome was to not add any additional pressure to town staff, specifically to the police officers and to yourself. So as the plan of the committee is to gather the requests from the community, and depending on the type of request, if it's something that's going to need police involvement, our intention was to work very closely with the police, but not to require somebody to be in attendance at every meeting.
I'd like to dive back just I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Of course.
You had mentioned that no other departments attended the temporary traffic safety committee. My understanding was that interim committee, the sole purpose was to determine whether or not a permanent committee is needed. You didn't need me for that decision. But now that it appears that decision is being made, it needs to include me. And I just can't say that strongly enough.
Sure. The purpose of that committee was to determine whether a permanent committee would be needed and make a recommendation on its charge, essentially, and membership. One of the things that the committee did spend a lot of time on was discussing what the membership would look like, whether it would include staff members or just include the public. And we got input from a lot of other traffic safety committees around the state. And we made the decision that the formal membership, meaning the voting members, would strictly be members of the public appointed by the select board, but there would be staff intimately involved in the process. And we certainly identified the DPW as being, the obvious connectivity. Scott was certainly a big part of all of our meetings, and I hope he'll, continue in that role going forward with a new committee if formed. I have no problem saying also the police department has an equal say in there. Echoing what Laura said is we didn't want to force it upon staff to make sure that everybody attended every meeting. I am fine doing that. If, as police chief, you think you should have a department member at every meeting, then I have no problem including that in there.
I do.
Mr. Chairman?
Bob.
I would support what the chief has said. In communities that I've been in, traffic safety requests are generally run by DPW, fire, and police. As the committee has pointed out, there are several communities across the state that have traffic safety committees, but they are safety committees after all. As the chief had mentioned, I can't imagine that there are going to be very many considerations that come before this committee that won't involve the police department, given the mass codes, Chapter 90, and all of the different regulations that come into play. Also, I know I'm a little, as you mentioned, late coming into the game. I'm a bit concerned about extra time of staff going to these meetings where, at least in my experience, these would be handled by staff during staff time. But with that said, I would support what the chief has said. I think the chief is looking for a voting member. I would think at most of these meetings, if not all of these meetings, the committee would want someone from the police department there. So perhaps a designee from the police department could be a voting member of the committee.
Again, I'll echo that the temporary committee was pretty clear in preferring that the voting members be members of the public, since it is our town that we're acting upon, just like there would be a staff member on the select board, for example. But obviously we'd work in close coordination with the relevant staff. And towns do it different ways. I think, Scott, at one of the meetings you had a pretty good point on that it gave you some distance from decisions being made, that as staff is one thing, as decision makers, as voting on things is another. I forget. It's been a month or two since you made that, but I thought that made a lot of sense.
Sure. As far as the burden on me or my department, we are liaisons to no committees or boards. So we're not being overwhelmed with requests for staff time. It would either be myself or the lieutenant. We're exempt people, so there's no cost to that. We can also tailor our schedules so that we can meet most of the meetings that we need to be at.
Great.
I think most of the work that this committee is going to do is going to involve recommendations to the board for bylaw changes, which will have to be done at town meeting. And we're going to be asked to speak on it. And I just think our input early on is completely necessary. So at least a sitting position, whether it's voting or not voting, I don't care. But there needs to be someone there to answer questions other than engineering questions, because Scott doesn't enforce laws. And I think you'll get honest feedback regarding the enforcement of these things and what's necessary and what's not. At least in an opinion.
Great. All right, we've got a lot of hands up. I think I saw Julianne's first and then Kristen's, then Lisa's.
So I just want to make the comment that I think having the police there on a regular basis is actually going to save time, because inevitably questions will come up for them. Oh, we have to go ask them, and it's a month later. So I think it's just a great idea. And as long as the police will make the time, I'm grateful to take advantage of that. That's it.
Okay, Kristen.
I just wanted to say thanks to Chief Liver for explaining all of that.
Great. Lisa?
I agree with Chief Liver, and I do think that his role in that department is very important in traffic safety. Probably a little bit more important, sorry, Scott, than DPW, because they do the enforcement, and that is pretty much their bailiwick, where the DPW does more to put the signage up and to carry out the, some of the day-to-day physical stuff. So I would definitely support having the police on there, and I think they're an integral part of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board or from staff? Julianne?
So moving on from the police involvement, it specifically says in the goal of the traffic safety committee, you specifically say neighborhood streets. Is that because, I mean, neighborhood streets to me means streets other than Route 20. Does that mean something, or is it just all streets?
I'm just re-looking at which part of the,
it was
in terms of the charge?
The last line of the charge, Laura. Bikeability of neighborhood streets in Northborough.
It was all of the streets in Northborough.
Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't know if there was a message there. So okay.
No,
as long
I apologize.
As it's all streets.
Yes.
I would think it would also include the state highways, West Main Street, Southwest Cutoff, and Main Street. They are owned, operated, and maintained by Mass DOT, but they are part of our community, and I'm pretty sure there are safety concerns that'll come up along those corridors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if I'm the only one who worried about that, I'm fine with leaving it in.
We could have spent many more meetings finessing the language of that charge, but I think we got the point across pretty well. Not to speak on behalf of Laura, the chair of that group. Scott.
Yeah, just real quickly about the temporary traffic safety committee. It was brought together quickly and had 5 meetings. I've been involved with a lot of different committees, ad hocs, and the efficiency was fantastic to watch. Things were done quickly. They were organized. Each committee member, pulled the plow in the right direction. I was pleasantly surprised to see how quickly things got done. So great job, Laura, and Mitch, your involvement as well as the other members.
Thanks. Just looking at it, I want to make sure that not only staff, but the public recognizes that we were not explicitly excluding the police department. The staff line says Department of Public Works and other staff as needed. And our thought there was rely upon the town administrator to assign staff as appropriate. We didn't want to do that or force the select board to do that. But from what I'm hearing tonight, obviously the police department needs to play a very important role in this. So I have no problem at all stating in there, within the staff section, police chief or designee.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? Kristen.
Just a housekeeping question. So when we do the motion, does Laura need to read something slightly different as amended or something? as
So there was already one amendment that Laura caught is bikeability is listed twice in charge near the end, and that was one of these during committee edits. So we removed the second bikeability in there, and I think we can also state in there that the staff has changed from Department of Public Works and other staff as needed to Department of Public Works, comma, police chief or designee, comma, and other staff as needed. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. In which case, I would entertain a motion if someone would like to do that.
Chairman, I move the board to vote to create a permanent traffic safety committee as amended and recommended by the temporary traffic safety committee.
Second.
Motion made by Laura, seconded by Kristen. Any other discussions? Okay, all those in favor, Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We have a committee. So what we will do is I assume the office will begin advertising for membership and at an upcoming meeting, probably not the meeting on the 26th, that wouldn't be enough time, but maybe our July meeting or August meeting. If we don't have time during July, we can go ahead and consider appointments to that process, to that committee. Thank you very much. Moving on, White Cliffs reuse determination next steps. John, thank you very much for joining us. So at our last meeting, the board, sorry, before we continue, Lisa, I believe you had something you wanted to say before we begin discussions.
Well, since I don't have my paperwork in order yet, I'm going to have to set myself aside while you all chat about my favorite subject.
Understood. So for the record, Lisa is recusing herself from the discussion at White Cliffs this evening. And Lisa, if you could do me a favor and turn off your camera and microphone and rejoin us when we conclude that discussion. Thank you. So at our last meeting, we made a decision about the Metro West proposal, and the decision was to not move forward with that, which leaves the question, what do we do with White Cliffs? The way that I think the entire board sees this is town meeting authorized the purchase of White Cliffs back in 2016 for the purpose of historical preservation, and put a lot of CPC money into that. So we are as a select board bound to make every possible attempt to do exactly that. We need to figure out now the next steps, and there are a lot of different directions we could go. So Sean, since you're here, and you made mention and you sent something earlier to the board about asbestos and mold and lead paint, I think. Do you want to give us a quick on that, just as an entry into some of our discussion tonight?
Yeah, so I mean, I just think we've talked amongst staff since your last meeting. It makes a lot of sense if we're going to start to explore different options with the White Cliffs now that that proposal from Metro West is dead, that we need to start to understand what exactly we're looking at for numbers, regardless of what our determination is for the end use. And one thing we know for sure is in order to proceed forward, we're going to have to remediate some issues, mold, lead, asbestos. So we reached out and received a proposal from a LSP to go on site, evaluate what we have and develop budget numbers for us if we were to proceed with the remediation. So we will have a pretty accurate number of what it will cost to remediate those issues in no matter what use we look at for the building. And I think one of the driving factors behind it was back in last June when we got a mold analysis done in the building. We had a representative from Balfour Restoration, which is a nationwide mold remediation company, come in just to kind of give us an idea of what we're doing, some recommendations on what we could do short money wise to kind of control the situation, which is why we put in those dehumidifiers and all that stuff back last summer. And just talking to him, I asked him offhand, like what he thought we were looking at for a number for remediation. And he said anywhere between $1 to $2 million just to remediate the mold. That was an off the cuff remark. So I think getting this report done and getting an actual budget number will be helpful, because if he is right in that, and just I would assume he is, that's what he's done for a while. I've worked with him on a bunch of remediation projects at my old company. But to just know for sure really what we're looking at, I think that would help, because if we're looking at the cost of what it costs us to purchase the building just to remediate the mold, that puts us in a pretty scary situation.
Has there been any survey of these materials in the past, earlier on in the project?
So last June, same company that is proposing this assessment came in and did some tape lists for us just to determine what type of mold we had and in what areas of the building, but it wasn't a full evaluation and assessment of what it would cost to remediate those issues. So basically his report said very heavy concentrations on the first floor, a little bit less on the second floor, and okay on the third floor, not a ton up there. Which is why we have the dehumidifiers specifically located on the second and first floor. It's the reason why we went in and we sectioned off the additions to the building so that we could kind of control the airflow around the space. But to really understand what we're looking at, because again, it's not just mold, there's lead. There was lead issues on the exterior of the building. And there's asbestos on the property. So just to kind of have a solid idea of what we're dealing with, where we're dealing with it, and how much it's going to cost to address those issues makes a lot of sense. I mean, even if we don't end up doing any of the stuff, it's good information for any prospective buyer to have. It just puts us in a better situation with a lot more knowledge of where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly give us an understanding of what we've got. I'm concerned. So I know you weren't here in 2017, so this isn't on you, but this wasn't done when we initially acquired the building, as far as you know?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there was some lead stuff on the exterior of the building that was addressed. But I'm not entirely sure the entire scope of that.
Scott, do you have any more information on that?
Yeah, so we had an LSP do a phase 1 site assessment, which is a visual assessment. There was some minor testing done because there was evidence of lead paint on the exterior. So they did some lead testing, selective on the soils, and there was the error and the look was potential asbestos. So they did some selective testing, but there was not an inventory of quantities or any more extensive testing. Just, yes, it's lead. Yes, there's some paint in the soil. How far is it? How bad is it? How deep is it? That stuff was not obtained. And those are the types of things you need to have to get a hard estimate on cost.
Was mold looked at as part of that also?
Mold was not looked at during the initial assessment that was done with the architect, but mold was looked at afterwards. Sean, you want to brief a little bit on the mold report that was done recently?
Oh, I just did. Yeah, oh. That was June 2022. They came in, they did the tape lifts. We have his report on what types and concentrations and air quality based on each level of the mansion itself.
Yeah. Now I'd be curious if we had done this type of work when we initially acquired the building to really assess the condition, as well as now be able to look at, did anything change? But if that wasn't done, that wasn't done.
It wasn't, but I would assume with the mold, it's definitely progressed, because you've had no type of climate control in that building for close to a decade now. So that stuff's only going to get worse with time. Again, that's why we put in the dehumidifiers to help control the moisture content in the building.
There was, the roof was leaking for several years until we were able to get in there and under a DCAM waiver, get the roof replaced and those other rooms sealed off. So there was a number of years of water intrusion with no mitigation.
Thank you. All right. So one option is to, I think your recommendation is to pursue that type of work. I don't think you provided a total, but it was somewhere around what, $12,000 or $15,000 in total for those tests.
I think it was somewhere around 11. Yeah, something like that, like 10,
Okay.
10 and change.
Okay. So I know tomorrow night the CPC is meeting and they have on their agenda to discuss White Cliffs. And I think there was some discussion, at least among staff, that I had heard about seeing if they wanted to participate in something to further the process of White Cliffs. I don't know if this had come up in discussion or not, but I think Lori is planning to attend that meeting tomorrow. And maybe this could be part of that discussion. So this is only one piece of White Cliffs that happened to come up tonight, but obviously it makes sense to be part of the puzzle. Questions from the board. Let's deal with the remediation question for Sean, and then we'll get into the bigger picture. Julianne.
Okay, so one question is, and I'm just trying to be optimistic here. Is there any chance that the dehumidifiers have been helping the mold situation, or does it just like stop it where it was in that report?
It'll help it from progressing. There's no real way to stop it without addressing it. Like, you need to go in. The soft surfaces in most cases need to be replaced because they absorb it so much, there's no way to clean it. The hard surfaces need to be cleaned. And so what makes it such an expensive project is all that wood detail in the building, because that needs to all be sanded down by hand, cleaned, restained. Like, it's a very labor intensive process. Most of the time in these type of situations, if you're not dealing with a historic building, they just come in, rip out everything that's contaminated, encapsulate it, dry it out, and then put back new. But whereas we're trying to preserve a lot of the stuff in that building, you're looking at heavy man hours, which is what escalates the cost so quickly.
So if my memory serves me correctly, I asked the architects when they first came on board, I asked them about mold. They didn't have anybody on their staff to look at the mold situation, but they felt that the materials that the original mansion were built with were the kind of materials that really don't help grow mold. And so I guess I'm just hoping for the best here. But another question is, in the mold report, it says there's a lot of mold in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the addition, or
yeah, and that's why we sectioned that off with the plastic, and that's able to be taken down and moved.
Right. So everybody kind of agrees that has to go anyway. So, but there's probably additional cost for disposing mold material, or what?
I'm not sure. I generally contract that stuff out, so I'm not really versed on the disposal of it. So I can't really speak to that, but I can ask the LSP how that's handled.
Okay, thanks so much, John.
Mm-hmm.
Just question, does this proposal, would they look for mold particularly in the additions, or are you having them just ignore them and consider?
No, we're focused on what we want to preserve, just the main building.
Yep, perfect. Thanks. Other questions from the board? Laura?
Thank you so much, Chairman. So I guess my question is, we don't really have any direction about what the community is hoping to do with the White Cliffs that we can move forward with. And I'm just wondering why we're looking at spending money when there's some uncertainty about where we're going to go. So is it something we need to approve now? I understand why we would want to do it, but with the questions ahead and figuring out our next step, is it something that has to be paid for now and done now?
No, it's not something that needs to be done now. I just think it's what we're talking about is something that's going to need to be addressed regardless of the end use of the facility. So I think it's important for the public to understand what we're looking at for a base cost and what a prospective buyer would be looking at as well.
Yep.
So I think it's advantageous to have that information as the public starts to make their decision on that fact. But again, that's up to you guys.
And the other, sorry.
Yeah, I'd like Bob to address that.
Yeah, well, Sean, I think has explained it well, but as I mentioned, I asked that it be put on here, and there've been some discussions recently about how to proceed after Metro West and what can we coalesce around. I think that the numbers, I mean, I wasn't here when the vote was taken on White Cliffs. I don't know if this was explored or if, as Sean mentioned earlier, the cost of remediation is now going to be roughly the cost of what you paid for the building. I think these are the types of numbers that need to get out there in the same way that the building assessment that you voted on will help decision makers. I think numbers like these and having these assessments done on remediation and White Cliffs is going to be helpful to decision makers. I mean, I think these are the types of things you're going to need to know as you go forward and make decisions on what to do about that building and how much it's going to cost to preserve the building.
Appreciate that, Bob. Yeah, this I was not anticipating this to come up tonight until it was put into the packet. It's ancillary to what we're talking about. So I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but I'm not anticipating us voting on this tonight. I think it's a worthy part of the discussion.
Oh, yes. No, I'm not expecting a vote. As you said, Mitch, I think it's an important part of the discussion and part of determining where you go from here.
Julianne.
So I have a question for Sean again. So let's just say they go in and look at the mold, and there's some wood that can be preserved, and because there's not much mold, and other wood that we would like to preserve, but it would cost so much money. Do they break it down so we would know that?
So, I mean, in my experience, most of the time the wood can be preserved, especially in this case where it's all varnished and stained. That helps to seal the wood. The issue that you run into with mold is with porous surfaces, because that allows mold to get in and to grow. But they're not going to dispose of anything without our okay, but they will tell you this is what needs to be done. And then if you don't want to go that route, you'll probably lose them as a contractor, because they have a liability on their end if they're not remediating it properly. Does that make sense?
Yes, but okay, so I guess I wasn't clear. So let's just say they go into the dining room and it's all that wood is full of mold. So, but the living room maybe isn't. So as a town, can we decide, okay, we're willing to, to save some money and put up new walls in the dining room, but preserve the living room? Will they give us options? Will they say, it'll cost this much to take the wood down, but it'll cost way more money to clean the wood and put it back and all of that sort of thing?
I mean, I think those are the type of discussions you have with the vendor before you engage them. I think it'll vary company to company. But again, any remediation company, if it needs to be remediated, it's got to be remediated as part of the scope. They're not going to come in and pick and choose. They're just going to do what needs to be done to make it a safe and clean building.
So, but I think to answer your question a little more clearly through the chair, Julianne, the contractor is going to come in. He's going to assess the extent of the mold. If one room is more extensively damaged or infiltrated by mold in another room, that'll be identified. But at the end of the day, the estimates we're going to get are going to be to remediate the mold. There's not going to be a selective shopping list of what if we remove this and then dry it in a kiln? What if we do this in situ, meaning in place? It's going to be the cost to remediate it. So what that remediation consists of, we're not going to know until they go in there and do a full assessment. So if remediation requires the wood to come off because the lathing and the plaster behind it is full of mold, that'll be identified. If it can be done in situ, in place, that'll be identified. But we're not going to be able to kind of pick back and forth without going back and forth with the estimator.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Scott. All right. Are we done talking about this particular subset of the White Cliffs issue? And should we move on to the bigger picture? Okay. Sean and Scott, thank you very, very much for your insight on that. I agree. It's an important part of the puzzle and one we haven't talked about yet. And unfortunately, it seems like something that hadn't been reviewed other than last summer, it really hadn't been reviewed at all yet. Okay. So,
Thanks,
so
Sean.
You're welcome.
So we have some insight from the public as far as a project that would probably not be supported at town meeting. You know, a 52-unit apartment building adjacent to White Cliffs. There have been countless of other ideas tossed around. That was the only sort of concrete idea that that came in response to an RFP that was acceptable and so forth, but there have been other ideas. There are a couple of different directions we can take this. I think somebody mentioned earlier is get some public input. We talked about that last meeting, and I think that is important for us to do. I know Lori, who I guess couldn't be here with the meeting tonight, did contact, I forget the agency, a historic group at the state, and got a couple of references for people that can help with public input and some other things. Bob, do you have that handy, and can you give us a little bit of an idea as far as that option as it's been explored thus far?
I did see her emails, and I did discuss it briefly with her, but I think they're available to, I guess that option needs to be explored a little bit, but I think the idea of a facilitator coming in is a good idea. To my mind, you know, as an outsider, again, I think it's important to find those areas that people can coalesce around. I think there may be as many opinions about White Cliffs as there are people in Northborough. It's going to be critical to find that common ground. Part of why I wanted the capital environmental thing on the agenda tonight was to, you know, just learn the numbers, because the numbers are going to be helpful in finding that common ground and understanding the scope of the situation. I think that there are some specialists that Lori pointed out, depending exactly on what the board wanted out of the facilitator, but I think that's a good idea. I think that, you know, I kind of joked about coming back as interim again in 5 years and still dealing with White Cliffs. I think
I think you said 10 years.
Yes, I hope the new person lasts at least 10 years. But I think it's going to be important to, by whatever means, to begin to find some common ground here, because as I mentioned, I mean, I've heard so many different scenarios on what can be done with White Cliffs, and it's time perhaps in using the numbers. For example, the DBVW study might be a good way to begin to coalesce. Do people agree with the scenarios that are pointed out in that study, and the numbers in particular that are being pointed out? Because the way I read that study, unless you're going to be doing what it's zoned for now, which is a project like Metro West or residential, which means the building will come down. Unless you want to do that, you're looking at additions in the neighborhood of 20 to 30,000. So do we all agree on that? That's going to be an important point. You know, what's the price tag? As you all know as well as I do, it always comes down to money. And what is the price tag going to be? maybe White Cliffs will be looked at a little bit differently because of significance to the community, but money is generally the driving factor. And I think those numbers and agreeing on those numbers, whether it's through the DBVW study or however you want to do it, is going to be critical.
Thanks. Thoughts on bringing in an outside facilitator to help with this process? Julianne?
Okay, so one important detail I think we have to find out is if there is sentiment to just demolish the building, let's just say, all of these remediations cost way too much. What does that mean with our agreement with CPC? Are we going to have to pay them back any money because we didn't preserve the building? So that's one question I think we might have to ask our legal counsel.
Julianne, and that's if the decision is eventually to not save the building, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we would have to deal with that in that case.
So do we know the answer to that tonight, or should we get a legal opinion?
I don't know the answer to that.
Anecdotally, what I have read is we would have to refund that money. Presumably, if we sold the land to someone for developing something other than saving White Cliffs, we would hopefully, and I think there's a reasonable chance we could, is recoup the funds that we've put in thus far. And I don't think we can put that back into CPC funds. That part I don't know, but if we've thus far paid about $2.4 million between buying the building, replacing the roof, and some smaller ongoing costs. I think there's a reasonable chance that the town could recoup most or all of that money in the sale. And then what happens with that money, I don't know, but it wouldn't just go into the general fund. It would somehow need to be used to offset the CPC funds.
Yeah, I'll get an answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other question is, the people that Lori reached out to, is that like Historic New England and Mass Preservation, or do you know who are the people that Lori reached?
I'm looking for that. Hold on. It was someone at Preservation Mass.
Oh, good.
And there were two vendors mentioned that they had worked with. One was a Jennifer Goldson of JM Goldson, and the other was Susan Silverberg of Civic Moxie. There's some additional detail in Lori's email about each one and some pros and cons. I have not worked with either vendor before. I don't know the people at all, but I looked at both of their websites and they both seem capable in different degrees. One of them seemed a little smaller and maybe more appropriate for a project like this, and the other seemed to do larger scale stuff. But they both have a lot of experience working with the public and working with historic properties.
So I would like to offer that I would reach out to Architectural Heritage Foundation to find out, their website looks like they're just what we need, but I would like to just try to have a conversation with someone there and find out what they could possibly do for us. Is everybody okay with that? Or
my preference is most of those conversations should go through staff. If you've got a personal connection there, then talk to Bob or Lori, talk through that, and then make that contact if that's okay with them. But I think it's important for there to be a central point of contact for all of this. Thus far, it's been Lori, and if she's still has the available bandwidth to continue doing that, I think that would be great. But I would say have a conversation with her and figure out the best way of approaching it. I don't want to, otherwise I'm worried about the board going off in different directions.
Sure.
I think we should be cohesive about how we approach this.
So is this a group we agree someone should contact?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'm not, if you think so, then yes, we should contact them. Okay, Kristen, you had your hand up a little bit ago.
I did. Okay, so I didn't see that email from Lori. Maybe it just went to you as the chair, but maybe you could share that with us. I would like to look up those people as well.
Yep, I'll do that after the meeting.
Yeah, and then we got another email that said something about a statute. There's a statutory requirement that any property purchased with CPA money has to be protected by an approved permanent restriction. And I don't know what a permanent restriction is. And I suppose Laurie Connors would be the person who would definitely know, but I don't know if anyone in this Zoom room could.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with that based on just conversations I've had with Lori and some prior discussions. That is absolutely correct. That CPC money used for historic purposes, we need to do exactly as you described and put a restriction on that. That has not yet been done. I think the intention was to do that simultaneous with conveyance to another owner. Metro West, for example, that would have been one of the articles at the fall town meeting if that were to have moved forward. I think the thought process is what was, rather than doing it soon, right after the town bought the property, but wait a little while until permanent use was described and make sure that the deed restriction is compatible with the use. I wasn't part of it, when the town initially bought it, but that's, I think, the understanding that I have of the decisions made for that timing. But it would need to be done before we sold the building to anybody else. I'm not certain if it would need to be done if the town continued to own the building, but it probably does.
Okay, so what's getting restricted?
That the property, the historic value of the property and the specifics can't be changed. So the shape of the building, I defer those details to people more knowledgeable than I.
Right,
I believe in one of Norm Corbin's emails or detailed reports that he put together as part of the White Cliffs committee. He included some more details on that.
Okay, so well, it has been quite a while now, and I don't know if we're not immediately transferring this building to another owner or anything, does it make sense for us to just go ahead and do that? And does it cost money? I don't know. So that was just something that came up that seemed really important legally. We don't want to get sued. We don't want to cause trouble here. So I just thought I would check in on that.
I know that was a question that was raised a few months back when this board started to discuss White Cliffs and the Metro West proposal. Mm-hmm. And I believe town council said that it was not too late to have done it. I don't think they said any more than that. It's something the town meeting would need to approve. So in all likelihood, the earliest we would do that would be next spring's town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Again, questions as far as opinion, as far as bringing in an outside mediator to help us try to create some common ground, as Bob put it. Julianne?
Well, I mean, if we bring in an outside mediator,
Facilitator, I'm sorry, mediator is the wrong word. Facilitator is a better word.
Uh-huh. Well, do we talk to this person first and say, and get a sense from them about how they would proceed?
I don't know. Bob, I don't know if you've worked with anyone like this before. Again, unfortunately, Lori couldn't join us tonight, but she probably knows more about that than any of us here.
I believe you would. I mean, you would have specific goals that you're trying to reach and explain those goals to the facilitator. I mean, I think they would want to know that and what their particular goal is. Hopefully you share the same goals, but yes, I think that you would want to be meeting with this person and they would have a clear idea of where they're going with Northborough.
And is the facilitator someone who is well versed in historic buildings? Because like Kristen's question, you know, I would have answered it differently than Mitch. I think that there are various levels of preservation, National Register probably being the strictest, but so say a question like that comes up in the meeting. Does this person have the knowledge about preserving historic buildings to be able to answer all of those questions?
I mean, that's a question for those individuals, but based on the information that Lori sent Bob and I and the information on the website, I would guess the answer is yes, but I would want to confirm that with them. I mean, these are people that clearly have worked with historic preservation many, many times in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And they
that's good.
And they're recommended by Preservation Mass. Mm-hmm. Laura?
Thanks, Chairman. So I think the original question was whether we go forward with a facilitator. I guess my hope is that whatever we do, we're going to get as much feedback from the community as possible, because that's going to be the real heart of how we make a decision. So whatever the vehicle is that's going to be the most efficient way to canvass as many people as possible, I would definitely be in favor of.
Kristen?
Do we know how much a facilitator will cost?
I don't.
Okay, so we'll discuss that at another meeting. When we vote.
Yeah. I don't have. I don't think Lori has reached out to either of those to discuss scope of services and price.
Okay.
So, my gut feeling is that it probably isn't too much, because it's just facilitating a few meetings and doing a little bit of research. But I don't know what too much is. So obviously we're not committing any funds on that tonight. She may have more information for CPC when she meets with them tomorrow. I don't know. Julianne?
So I'm getting the feeling that we're all in favor of this, but there's some major questions that haven't been answered. So can we continue this to our next meeting, and hopefully Lori can come and...
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, this is just sort of beginning in the direction of figuring out the next steps. And I think we all agreed at our last meeting that we needed a lot of public input. We wanted the public input to be a core part of our decision-making process to determine next steps for White Cliffs. And the question is, do we want to use an outside facilitator, or do we want to do this ourselves? And I think there are advantages of using an outside facilitator. One, the expertise that comes with, and two, the independence from the town that comes with that. I think is important to, no bias. But I think it is absolutely critical to solicit and obtain the buy-in from many different groups in town and many different thought processes in town. Both those that worked hard, that brought the Metro West project to us, and those that worked hard to prevent it going forward. Both of those groups, both those sides, need to be part of this in order for us to save the building. Because eventually, unfortunately, the building would become unsavable. And we have been tasked by town meeting to save it, and that's our job. And I hope that when Bob comes back in 10 more years as our interim again, we've resolved the issue. I mean, from my perspective, ideally, I'd love to have it something that's before town meeting in April. I don't know how optimistic I am about getting all the ducks in a row for that purpose by then, but I think that's it's a reasonable first step goal. People have asked me, are we going to form another White Cliffs committee? Maybe. I think this board should take some ownership of the project a little bit first and create the White Cliffs committee once we have at least a little bit of a sight on an end goal, or at least processes. I think that was one of the things that happened before, is it just immediately went off to a White Cliffs committee without involvement from the board. This is back in 2017. And I think we've learned a lesson. We've got to do things at least a little bit different this time around.
So it's on every agenda for the next several meetings.
Yeah, I think it has to be. All right, so I think what I'm hearing is to ask Bob to work with Lori or other staff as appropriate to get one or more quotes on what it would take to have an outside facilitator help us with the next steps. I think that's going to be, again, Lori had told me that was what she anticipated discussing with CPC tomorrow night under their White Cliffs agenda item. She may have more details as far as costs for them that we don't have yet. And, but we would then, further take that up at our next meeting on the 26th of June. Sound reasonable, everybody?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else under White Cliffs to discuss, anybody? Okay. Next up, we have Northborough Extended Day Program, NEDP, approval of annual memorandum of understanding for use of facilities space. Bob, tell us about this if you could.
I think this is an annual agreement that's with Northborough Extended Day, which I'm looking to the board to approve the renewal. It's the same agreement as we've had in the past. It's been approved by the NEDP board. The only change is that rather than I guess it's typical, but it was the difference between the last two agreements was a 3.5% increase. You may recall that we are looking at moving offices with Family and Youth Services and Extended Day coming up to where Public Works is now, and Public Works going down to their space, particularly with the addition of an Assistant Public Works Director. So it was brought up, and I think it's fair. Lois asked about getting a break on the price, and we agreed, and I think they're very reasonable, that we would forego the 3.5% increase in this agreement. They've been very understanding about the change. They will be getting less office space, so I thought that was a reasonable compromise. Other than that, this is the same agreement that the town has entered into, and continue to offer them office space in the town hall.
Thanks, Bob. Two things. One, I see a hand up in the audience, which I'll recognize in a couple of minutes once the board has finished discussing. And Lisa, I did not specifically say if you would like to, you could rejoin our meeting. I assume you've been watching this part so far.
Yes, I have.
Okay, very good. You're welcome to turn on the camera and obviously turn on your microphone. Thank you. All right, so Bob, thank you for doing the work on that, and I think the rearrangement of the space in town hall makes some sense. Any other questions on the NEDP memorandum from the board?
No questions, but I know that the kids in the schools love the ones that participate in NEDP love it, and the programming is great. So
it's such an incredibly successful.
It really is.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Okay, the person who had their hand up in the audience has taken it down. If it was a question for NEDP, raise it back up. I'll recognize you. If not, we'll have public comments again at the end of the meeting. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the fiscal year 2024 annual memorandum of understanding between the town and Northborough Extended Day Program, Inc. for the use of office space and facilities at the town hall, and to authorize the interim town administrator to execute same.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded by Laura. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Kristen?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. That is approved.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much for doing that, Bob. Next up, we've got a cemetery deed number 1168 Is there a motion on that? And Lisa, your camera is still off if you would like to turn it back on for us.
I move the board vote to execute cemetery deed 1168.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Lisa, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? Laura?
I noticed on this deed that there's no name included, and I think in the past it's like, is it like a blanket statement now, or why is there no name included in this
I
deed?
believe names are frequently removed for the packet for privacy reasons of the family.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? Not all those in favor. Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Very good. Next up, we have reports. Let's see. Julianne, do you have any reports this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would first like to mention that the Cultural Council did a fantastic job with their Culture Fest this past Saturday. Great entertainment and artists and food. And so I just want to say many thanks to the Cultural Council and the volunteers that they had and the participants for organizing the festival. And second is an announcement. The Master Plan Implementation Committee will host meeting number 3 with Weston and Sampson, our consultants, to refine the ideas that we've been talking about for a while. And that will be an in-person meeting Tuesday, June 20th, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the high school library. So everyone, please come. This is our final meeting, our final community forum with them. And then I just have, I guess it's a request that we discuss using the senior center in extended hours. Occasionally and frequently enough, I've been asked if groups can use the senior center on Saturdays or evenings. And I guess we have been pretty restrictive with using that building. And I'd like to talk about how we could maybe use it for certain other functions. So that ends my report.
So using the senior center off their regular hours.
Right.
Or public events.
Right.
Okay.
From community groups, Northborough community groups.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly don't know the answer to that or anything else, but that's, I'm sure Bob heard us and can look into that.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Kristen, any reports this evening?
Yes, thanks. Last Wednesday, we were all able to tour the old town hall for West Main Street. I hadn't realized how large it is with the basement and the 5th floor, which is basically a finished attic. If you look up, it's in the roof. It is basically like 6 stories that could be used. And it will be really interesting to see what we can do with that. And I appreciate the tour. I really enjoyed walking around there. I missed the Culture Fest because I was at so many graduation parties that day. Algonquin Regional High School graduated. I put down 327 students. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like I read that in the program, including my son, Peter. Even though the weather was unpredictable and it was held indoors, it was a really lovely ceremony. So thanks to the school committee and the superintendent and Principal Bevan for that. I'd like to congratulate all the graduates and wish them all well in their future endeavors. And then I already read my quote because it was by Chief Liver about the police officers. I just thought that was really interesting. And also, I happened to notice today when I was going to pick up my car that one of the buttons on the crosswalk at Route 20 and Bartlett Street is broken. So I will email Scott about that. I don't know if our DPW fixes that or is that a state thing or whatever, but hi, Scott.
Hi. So that's under the control of Mass DOT. I will email them in the morning and let them know, okay?
Yeah, I'll tell you specifically which button.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Any other, does that conclude your reports, Kristen?
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's the end
Okay.
of my report. Thanks.
Very good. Lisa, any reports this evening?
Yes, I do. Thank you. First off, Julian and I attended last Friday's selectmen information at the MMA. It was very interesting. They did talk about a couple of different places had called. A couple of people in the audience had asked the same kind of questions that we were talking about for a while now, and that's like how does selectmen set their goals, and there were several people that had decided that they thought that was a great idea for selectmen to set once a year, get together, set a goal or set goals, and work toward those goals because it helps for everybody. Each department and staff and committees and the boards to be able to get a better understanding of working together. And I think that's a great idea. And I think we probably should be doing that sooner than later. They also mentioned that a selectman could also go and do research and take a few people with them to research and come back to the board and discuss it with the board. And I think that's important too, because it not only brings back some information in a more timely fashion, but it also builds bridges in some places where you make those inquiries. And I think that's something that I would like to start seeing happen. The second part of my report is on the sidewalk parking that I discuss over and over again. And I think we really need to start to bring more awareness to the fact that there's just so much parking on the sidewalks that don't belong. We have a handicapped neighbor who goes up and down on a daily basis and finds difficulty passing many times. And I think it's something other neighbors have requested information on. Why can't we do something about it? And I'm going to ask, I see that Chief Liber has stayed, and I totally appreciate him staying on, to give him maybe his opinion too on how he would like to discuss some of what we can do about this. And I'm going to hand over the floor, if I may, to him for a few minutes.
That's all right with me, if it's okay with the chief.
You have to keep in mind, I think that there are a number of offices that work, and there's over 200 streets in Northborough and over 100 miles of town-owned road. My offices don't patrol every street, every shift. It's just not possible. They're also busy taking calls for service, responding to 911 calls and things like that. So if anybody becomes aware of a parking hazard or a hazardous situation involving parking, people parking on sidewalks, call the station and report it. We'll dispatch someone to that location and they'll take appropriate action. Our municipal bylaws specify that most of our violations, first offenses, are warnings. And our particular policy and procedure on parking violations is that we will go assess the situation, run the license plate, find out who the registered owner is, and give them the courtesy of a reasonable amount of time to be located and to move the vehicle. And so that's kind of the educational piece, and that's the soft touch to start with. But repeat offenders will get ticketed. It's a $50 fine, and the car can be removed because it's obstructing public traffic, be it a pedestrian, a bicycle, or a car. It doesn't matter. So that's my advice on that situation. Is people just need to call if they find a traffic violation or a safety hazard. We will take action. Sidewalks are for people, not for cars. One of the bigger problems that we do have is on the day shift, and it's on narrow streets with people from the trades or from landscape companies. They just decide they're going to park their trailer and put cones out. And one of our bylaws also requires that if a street is not posted no parking, that they have to provide for a sufficient lane width or road width of 10 feet or at least, or that's subject to being towed because that's considered obstructing public travel as well. So it's not just parking on sidewalks, it's just parking on streets in general. If there isn't 10 feet of passable space, the vehicle's in violation, it can be towed. So it's a public awareness thing. We are timely within the next week or so unveiling we're rolling out a new police department webpage. That's a whole lot more user-friendly. And we have a whole host of different things that we're going to roll out. One of my pet projects is, and I've wanted to do this for a while, is a section called Navigating Northborough. The do's and don'ts of traffic safety in Northborough. What you can do, what you can't do, where you're supposed to yield and where you have to yield. We have some really unique intersections and lane reductions in town, particularly on West Main Street and in front of the library or just before. We have lots of little minor fender benders there, but when people get the ticket because they thought that they had the right of way, when in essence the sign that says lane ends, that's your responsibility. So we're going to do a little bit more education on what's legal and what's not, and what driver responsibilities are. So I've been wanting to do that for a long time. So this website will make that much easier. That's my piece.
That's great.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Lisa, back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Chief, for staying on as long as you did, so we could hear from you. I'd also like to get a public service announcement out, if we could, to make people even more aware of the sidewalk parking, so that we're not trying to make it a money maker as much as it is a public safety issue, and that people need to be far more aware of the parking on the sidewalks. So I'd like to be able to ask our town administrator to do that, if that's possible.
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the third thing that again, hearing from a lot of different residents on how the Brigham Street burial grounds has been progressing. It was quite different when it was offered at town meeting. That was talked about 20 trees being removed and to 85 to 90 trees that have been removed. And there was some a little bit of a surprise in the way that they were all just kind of logging type of a situation taken down. And now we have a big open space. There's been talk of, before there was a canopy of trees and they didn't have to really maintain the property that much. And so things are going to change now that it's all open. And I did look through the RFP and I noticed that we have no trees planned to be replanted. And I think we're going to have to change that. I think you can't take out that many trees and just leave the land wide open like that and not have, the birds used to live there or whatever wildlife may have made a home there are all now displaced. They'll probably be in my backyard. But I think that that's something that needs to be addressed, and the concern of the residents who have been talking about it for a while. So I wanted to bring that up.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
On that, and I've certainly received a lot of comments on that. I don't know what the understanding was at town meeting about when the money was approved as far as the number of trees or what, but there was a certified arborist that went through. He identified the number of trees that needed to come down that were either dying or were diseased that had fungus. So there was additional trees that had to come down, but they were identified by an arborist. I think to some extent we have to see what this project is going to look like when it's over. I know it's a cemetery and it's very special, but it's also, for lack of a better term, a construction site. It may not look pretty right now, but I think when all is said and done, it'll live up to its title, which is a beautification project.
Thanks, Bob. Scott, I see you have rejoined. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't. I just, Bob covered it. Thank you, Bob. I'm the tree warden in town. I'm responsible for public shade trees within the right of way. I went out there and assessed the trees. I had some question about the hemlocks. I brought out a licensed arborist. He reviewed the hemlocks. They were infested with a fungus that's killing them slowly. So in the bid package, as Lisa indicated, there's 85 trees to be removed. And yes, Bob is correct. If we have some patience, we wait, the grading will be done. There is some money in reserve for additional efforts, whether it be beautification or memorialization at the property. When you do a public bid project, you never know what the number is going to be when it comes in. It came in. We have some surplus out of the town meeting allocation to do things such as what Lisa's suggesting with additional trees or more signage or something at the property. So it's a work in progress. The planting season is coming up in early fall, so just bear with us. It's going to look nice.
Okay, thanks, Scott. I mean, I'll add just to that. I did drive by it late this afternoon. It certainly looks more clear cut than I would have anticipated based on the description at town meeting, but it is where we are. So we've got to finish the project and see if anything else needs to get done at that point. Lisa, back to you.
That ends my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Laura, any reports
Thank
tonight?
you. So I had a nice time when we celebrated Memorial Day back on the 31st. And I just want to express my gratitude to everyone that joined us and to all the volunteers that made it possible. It was nice to see the attendance and all that we did for the community, for our fallen heroes. And I also want to say I was really disappointed to see that heavy equipment was used to remove trees at a cemetery. I am a member of the Northborough Historical Society. I greatly appreciate the work for the beautification, but I do think we could have done it in a more respectful way. These are the founding families of our town that have been laid to rest here. And I just thought that it was having those giant equipment to use to remove those trees seemed excessive. I've had a lot of trees removed at my house. We live in the woods, and I've never had giant trucks like that do it. So it was a little bit upsetting to see. But otherwise, that is all that I've got to report today. And thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Laura. Bob?
Well, on that, and I see Scott is still with us and he can certainly address this better than I do. But as I mentioned, we have gotten several complaints and the size of the equipment was one of them. My understanding is that it's that size so that the tracks will be wider and have less impact, less depth of impact on what's there. My understanding is that there has been ground penetrating radar that's been done. A survey has been done. The town is well aware of what is underground there. I think that every effort was made to minimize the impact on the area. Also, I think that, Scott, you can correct me, but what I understand is that the graves will be marked. Some graves that aren't marked now will be marked. I mean, it's going to end up being a much better project, being much better in appearance, the trees notwithstanding, which I guess will be replaced as we go along, but it'll be much better looking when it's completed.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, all the trees that were removed were dead, dying, or diseased. They needed to be removed. The equipment that was out there was low ground pressure equipment, tracks, or large diameter tires. The GPR presented burials at 24 inches and deeper. The equipment was required to not disturb soil any greater than 8 inches depth. The contractor did that. Yes, it was a lot of work to get that down. There was no financial possibility to remove them with a crane from the street. That would be an enormous crane to reach those size trees in the back of the property. So we did every effort we could to keep an understanding between us and the contractor that this is a burial ground and not a land clearing operation. And Bob is correct. I spoke with Norm Corbin about opportunities for utilization of the funds from town meeting. Can it be with some grave markers? Can it be with some additional tree plantings? There are a lot of opportunities to beautify the grounds once the grass is established and the perimeter granite post and chains are in. So it's going to look a lot better. It's difficult during the construction processes to see what the end game is going to be, but it'll be a beautiful end product.
Julianne?
Yeah, I have a question for Scott. Thanks for staying on, Scott. So since the trees were diseased, do we have to wait a while before we can plant new ones? Like, how do you make sure that all the fungus is gone and the woody elgin or whatever was taking over there?
Part of the construction process is to do soil analysis. So the growing season won't begin again until late September, early October. We have time to do some soil analysis, find out what the nutrient conditions are in the soil, amend it as needed. If there is a fungal infestation, it's all hemlock. We're not putting any hemlocks back. There are some hemlocks further back in the property. We tried to clear what trees in the back of the property were compromised, but it's a specific fungus attributed to hemlock, so we won't be putting them back. But the soils will be analyzed and properly treated for the new grass that goes in.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And Laura, you said that ended your report, correct? Great, thank you. I won't repeat the items under my report that have already been mentioned. I will mention that I also attended this past weekend the Northborough Art Guild's art show, which was at the Historical Society building. It was beautiful. We've got some great artists in the community. So keep an eye on that the next time they do that show. And an update on the Town Administrator Screening Committee. We've got a meeting 2 nights from now on Wednesday night, where we will be reviewing a number of applications that were received, determine who we, the screening committee, want to interview, which will take place the following week. The goal, broadly speaking, is to interview about 6 people. Those are all in executive session to protect the identities of those applying for the job, because they have not informed their current employers that they're looking. We've got some well-qualified applicants, I will say that much. And then probably the first or second week of July is when we would forward names to the select board for interviews. So as that gets further along, we'll be scheduling 1 or more interview meetings for this committee to interview roughly 3 that we might forward, and that would of course be an open session. And that ends my report. Kristen.
I know that's your report. I just realized, like, oh, it's his report. I'm not supposed to ask questions. But did you, do you have any idea when the interviews that we would be doing would be happening? Do you have a ballpark?
Either the first or second full week of July.
Okay, great.
That hasn't been, we're not that far ahead yet. It's depends. For example, we don't know yet when we conclude the interviews. Are we going to, the screening committee, are we going to narrow it down to the approximate 3 that night, or will we need another meeting to schedule and figure that out?
Okay, thank you.
So we'll get it figured out pretty soon. That ends my report. Bob, was there anything else that you wanted to share with the board tonight?
No, not too much. I would just say that to follow up on the MMA training that was done last week, and Lisa mentioning goals, I am pursuing the board training that was discussed, and do have someone in mind, someone I've known for quite a while who's done quite a bit of board training, and that's an essential part of what he would be talking to the board about, is the establishment of goals.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Thank you. Next, we have any other business to come before the board, and then after that will be the last public comment. So any other business for us tonight? Julianne, we rarely have any other business on your mind.
Well, happy to accommodate. So I was just thinking that as we discussed the Brigham Street Cemetery, I know that our municipal code and bylaws needs to be reviewed. It hasn't been reviewed in quite some time, but as it stands now, there's a couple of pages, I think, that say that the selectmen are responsible for a tree program and replacing shade trees. So if we still are involved in that, I would love to hear from maybe our local nursery or Tower Hill or and really, do something beautiful and exciting at that cemetery since it's an open canvas now. So that's just, I wanted to add that. Thank you.
Sure. Scott, I saw you came back on. You have something to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that portion of the bylaw is related specifically to public shade trees, which are within the right of way. This is in a property that's off the right of way. But if there's an opportunity for Tower Hill or local nurseries to provide some species, some trees for plantings, Public Works would be happy to get involved and help out.
Thanks.
Great. Lisa?
And on that note, which brings me up to public shade trees, we've had a lot of trees removed in the past several years, and none of them have been replaced. Is that something that's on the short list? Because I know that was one of the things that is in the bylaws that say that we have a certain amount of time to replace those trees. And we're seeing more and more trees being cut down. We have less and less canopied. The seasons are seeming to getting hotter and hotter in the summertime. And I think it's something we need to start thinking about and replacing, because we've gone a long time of taking them down, but we've done nothing in those areas to replace them. So Scott, maybe you can shed some light on that.
I'd be happy to. So currently we remove 55 to 65 public shade trees a year. They're in the operating budget. We have $50,000 for a contractor to come out and help out with the trees that are a little beyond our capacity because we don't own an operated crane. We have not had a program for replacement of trees. A lot of communities in our area do have that program where the public shade tree is replaced with a private tree on the property owner's side of the right of way, with an understanding that it's their tree thereafter if they would like it. But there's no operating budget right now for tree replacement.
So then if we were to do a little budgeting out of that ARPA money to help that happen, since it doesn't sound like it's going to happen in a while unless you get some capital, perhaps that's another thing that we can start to look at with the ARPA money, because it's a part of the beautification of the areas. I think it's healthy for the environment, and I think it's something that we absolutely have to put in. Are we then saying that if the owner that has the land next to it is not willing to take care of it, does that mean we don't put a tree back for one we've taken down?
Well, that's a policy decision for the board. A lot of communities see the liability associated with public shade trees and push them back 5 or 8 feet onto the private property because it's generally the abutter who's looking for it. But that's a policy decision for the board.
Okay, I think at some point it'd be nice for us to put that on an agenda item, Mitch, and maybe see what we can do about that since fall is coming. I imagine you can't really plant until the fall. Is that what you're saying? You don't plant until the fall now?
No, I didn't indicate that. I'm not an arborist. I don't run a nursery. I don't know when which species can be pulled or no, I didn't say that.
Okay. So just going on what the cemetery was, so that you were waiting for the fall for planting, but that was different?
No, I said we had surplus resources from the bid versus what was allocated at the town meeting. And if the decision was to install trees with the surplus funds, that's an option. If the decision was to put something to memorialize burials, that's an option. That I didn't indicate anything seasonal.
Okay, so there's not a problem with planting during the year. It's not a fall plant. I'm just trying to.
I don't know. I'm not a.
I think what you had said is you would refer to the fall as the planting season for the grass.
For grass, yes.
And
you plant grass in late September and early October. Yes. Yes.
All right, great. Well, if we can move on that'd be great. Not the grass, but the trees on the agenda.
I'm happy to help.
Okay. All right. So I think that more than concludes the other business to come before the board. We have now public comment, and we have a hand up. Rick Leaf. Rick, if you could unmute, identify yourself and let us know what's on your mind, please.
Yeah, this is Rick Leaf, 30 Wiles Farm Road. I have two comments now. I had one comment, but now I have two. As far as involving local nursery or Tower Hill, Pat Bigelow obviously has our biggest local nursery. Pat's also a member of the Board of Trustees at Tower Hill Botanic Garden. So Pat might be a good person to contact as far as what availability there might be of resources from her nursery or connections she can make at Tower Hill to help out with some of this replanting talked about. That's just something that Scott or someone could do, reaching out. Or I know Pat has been very cooperative in working with the town on other projects. The main thing I wanted to comment on was White Cliffs, both from the role that the Master Plan Implementation Committee is playing on the whole downtown revitalization, to the extent that decisions are made about what to do with the White Cliffs in the future. It would be nice if that would be tied in with recommendations that are going to come out of the report from the consultants about the downtown to sort of integrate those things. I was at the town meeting when we decided to buy the property. There was not a lot of advanced research done on the cost. There was not a lot of decision-making about what would happen with the property. The fact of the matter was that the current owner had an agreement with a real estate developer to demolish the building and put in a real estate subdivision on the property. The town had a limited amount of time to respond to the owner as to whether we wanted to acquire the property or not. At the town meeting, there was a spirited debate about the pros and cons of acquisition as opposed to letting the residential subdivision go in. A lot of the people who are more financially conservative were against acquiring the building and expressed concerns about exactly what the town is facing right now with the building. The fact of the matter, though, was I can't remember if that was the year of the 250th anniversary of the town or close to the 250th anniversary of the town. The sentiment was we didn't want that building demolished right around the time we were celebrating our 250th anniversary, and that sort of won the day kind of thing. I think because of the lack of financial information, the people who voted in favor of preserving the building didn't have all the information or facts about what that really entailed. So as was discussed tonight, I would strongly recommend that the study that was recommended by Scott to take a look at all the remediation cost be accomplished. And that also, as Bob recommended, understanding the rest of the cost that it would take to make the building usable again would be determined to some level before the first public meeting was held. So when the first public meeting was held, there'd be at least some understanding from the people there as to what it would cost to get the building ready for any kind of use. And I think that would be helpful to then get some sort of feedback from people about what their opinion about that is, as people also express their opinions about how they'd like to see the property be used in the future. But I think it's critically important that people understand what the financial impact is going to be going forward, especially before we bring something up at town meeting. So let's not repeat kind of the lack of financial information we had the first time, which I think led us to where we are now before we engage the public again. So I would just recommend that whatever we can do to get all those numbers together in advance of a public meeting would be really helpful. That's what I got to say.
Thank you very much, Rick. Well stated. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment at this time? Going once, going twice, public comment is over. That being the last agenda item, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Kristen to adjourn. All those in favor, Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Lisa? Was that an aye, Lisa? I see nodding. And Laura?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We are adjourned 9:43 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Everyone.